chat. Welcome to the UTG show.
All right. So I wanted to share my thoughts on a number of stocks. I'm going to try and run through them efficiently and quickly, just so this video isn't too long. But these are the stocks that I am looking forward to in the near to long-term future. Most of them are going to be longer-term plays, with the exception of just a couple. And so usually my plays do tend to take quite a while to develop before seeing the overall reaction, just because they're on larger time frames. And that's just the way that I like to play trades, right? So first of all, we'll just run through root here. So a stock that originally, right, squeezed bottom at $3 into a reaccumulation, and then the squeeze broke out, right, into another reaccumulation, and now you're seeing a distribution and then a redistribution into now this kind of boxy area, right? And so couple things that happened, and I know this there's a lot of lines on here, so bear with me. We're only going to zoom in on this range here, right? So with root, as it broke down and it back tested this same box a few different times and rejected. So the first initial interest to me is that we've had a few touches of bullish divergence appear, but we've also had bearish divergence, right? Hidden bearish divergence, meaning continuation of the trend downward. And so that's what we saw after this last print. We even saw lower lows, including to date. We left off with a TD12. Currently, there's still a day to go yet. So I'm looking for the 13 count print, and I want to see a terminal candle, right? Something like this, the long underside wick to develop. We're also near the macro golden pocket, right? 61 to 64.5 bucks. So if that confluence were to occur there, and maybe you get the 13 and then a follow-up 7, 8, 9. That's totally possible as well. Another thing to note is we just had this butterfly completion today. There are a few other harmonics that I have drawn lower. If we were to break down below the golden pocket and continue down, we have this gap fill all the way down to 42 bucks, roughly, along with the other harmonics that I have laid out here. I wouldn't like to see that. I think it's too far away to determine that yet. We have to deal with this macro support of the golden pocket first before we even consider that, but just know that it is there. And so we have this harmonic completion. We're looking for that TD13 reversal count, and potentially the 7, 8, 9 to follow to boot if that were to occur at the golden pocket. I'm not really interested yet. Volume is putrid on the indicator here, indicating that there is no current strength. And so this is kind of the key area that I'm looking for. There is a death cross that is formed on the 2-day, which isn't ideal. And so typically you want to go short while, under the death cross, and longs on top of a golden cross. Let's dive in here on the daily. So it looks like we had a TD8 on the countdown phase, potentially signaling that we might get further downward movement as well. maybe playing into a simultaneous 13 count that we're looking for on the 2-day. The weekly is also printing a 7-10, a 7 setup TD count in a 10 countdown phase setup. The weekly has also managed to stay out of the bear zone. You also have kind of this wedge going here, right? So I think at the very least, you'll get a relief bounce up to 71 bucks. That's where we have a flash at. Best case scenario, this is the macro reversal point, right? Making your 3 rising valleys total, and then you start looking for these higher targets long term. I think it's a great long term stock. You know, 100 bucks is a 50% move. You know, going all the way back up to 218, which is the highest flash that we got recorded. Up at 150 bucks, it's a 222% move. This thing was trading, you know, just recently at 180 bucks. There's no reason that we can't go back there long term. So this is what I got for Root. Going to the next one. Hims. So Hims, kind of similar, right? Was at all-time highs, went through a distributive phase, back tested, rejected, and now we're in this downward descending channel. On the, if we zoom in here, first of all, we had this Gartley harmonic completion. You saw a little reaction, but to this size, I would actually expect something a little bit larger. And so now it's trying to find a form of support to bounce off of. And so diving in here, we actually broke through the bottom of this structure, right? We had a flash at 28.30 in the recent uptrend from today, just this 4-hour candle. It did leave a couple of other flashes at 28, 38, and 32. So I do believe that we will be coming back down to at least this area in the near future. We also have to keep in mind we have this gap fill down to 25.79 on the 4-hour to pay attention to. I love Hims long term. I just don't think the buying point, the entry point is there yet. The 4-hour is near oversold. That's something I'm really looking at, because the amount of times that this 4-hour has hit near oversold or oversold territory, it's pretty much bounced, right? Really once, about halfway through twice. It did it here 3 times, and then if you want to count 4 and 5, sure. But I do really like this long term with the profit targets all the way up to, you got a flash up at 51 bucks, and then you have the gap fill up at 58 bucks roughly. So from today's pricing, right, to the flash at the very least, you're looking at 75% increase, and then to the gap fill, you're looking at almost 100% increase. Again, something I'm monitoring. I want to see buyers step in. I want to see expanding green high volume, and I want to see terminal candle, something better than this. That doesn't really do anything for me. I want to see something a little better to give me a little bit more confidence. Now, could this thing come back up, find support, and go? And eventually break out of this, back test the breakout, and continue going? Sure, it totally could. But with that, you're going to see expanding green volume, right, show up in this kind of U-shaped volume format here. But until we see that, we don't really have a leg to stand on, right? Because why would you buy a stock that does this when you can buy a stock that looks something like this, where you have a defined area of support and resistance, and you know, okay, well, if we're starting to bounce between here, these are certain levels that I can, feel comfortable in being able to place a trade and then set my stop loss, right, just below that. This is what you want. This is not what you want, right? And so until we get this defined range, I'm not interested in placing a trade yet. But like I said, if this move happens and we see expanding volume, sure, then game on, set your stop loss right just below our previous low, and off we go. But until that happens, we're just waiting. So love it long term. We're just hanging out, chilling, waiting to see what happens. See if there's anything on the weekly here. So weekly, you do have this RSI wedge as well. The SMA is still too far away from the RSI line, meaning that it needs more time to cook. It's not ready yet, and you are starting to touch into the bear zone on this, so keep that in mind. MACD isn't close to turning over either yet, so yes, this definitely needs time. So there will be time. It needs time, and there will be time to place an entry. So don't feel like you're going to miss out on anything, but just be patient with this thing. It looks good for long term. We're just hanging out. PayPal, kind of similar, right? These are some banging long-term port stocks. A lot of these are gap lines, but in the interim time, this is what I'm looking for here, right? So kind of the same thing as HIMS. You kind of have this descending structure, right? You even have this this daily broadening wedge on the RSI going down. So I'm looking specifically for a couple things. I want to see a break of this broadening wedge, whether it happens right here, right now, whether it does this and does it at a later point in time. But I want to see a full break crossing the SMA line, crossing outside of this broadening wedge, and eventually I want to see confirmation above the 50, which it has failed to do. It actually hasn't been above the 50 until last October, it looks like. Other things to note, there is a butterfly harmonic that completes at 55.02 roughly. That would also fill this gap down right below that I'm looking for. But very, very similar to HIMS. It's not quite ready yet, and there will be time to place an entry. So don't feel like I better hop in, because if I don't, I'm going to miss the chance, right? We don't want to do ROMO, and we don't want to do FOMO. We want to do this properly. If you can see this red box here, right? This is a demand box. This is taken from the prior move, the wick low, to the next bodied candle. That is a form of support that the buyers stepped in last and sent this thing, all the way up to 80 bucks roughly. So we have now broken below that box, and we're now back testing the bottom side of it. If buyers are not there to resend this thing back up, not ideal, right? And now we're probably actually looking for further downward movement. Right now we're going to look at both of these gap fills as well as this next bigger demand box, right? Same thing. This thing sent it, all the way up technically. And so that demand box is at 50 bucks. If we have the same thing here, right, breaks down, back tests, and breaks down further, right, you're looking at that 786 for support. If it breaks that, now you're really in trouble, right? Because now we're going to look at this gap fill, and honestly, there's really nothing stopping it from going all the way down to 38 bucks, right? You have a harmonic there. You have the macro 886 there. That is this is super easy to identify, but again, you're talking, you know, 32% move down. Nothing to be super concerned about at this point, but just know that if it does come down here, I can guarantee you that I'm not going to be the only one racing to buy this thing, because that is a screaming deal on PayPal. And I do like the future that PayPal has, in where I think the Bitcoin and other coins, and how they're going to integrate in the market, in my belief. So, anyways, this thing does have a fib time zone, Friday, actually, on the 23rd. So it is very possible, even if you get a relief bounce, right? You could totally get a relief bounce off of this demand zone here, shoot back up, maybe hit these flashes, fill that gap, and maybe run into this macro golden pocket, reject it for further down. Totally possible, right? Maybe even see a break of that wedge and then a rejection of the 50 center line to send it back into the broadening wedge for further downward movement, essentially creating a fake out breakout, right? But this thing has been in a downtrend, right, for quite a while now. So totally possible. But this is kind of the thing that I'm looking for. If we do see volume step in and we get back above, right, even this quick move from here to that gap fills 15%, the flash is 17, and then the golden pocket is 20%. That's a banging trade. Like, you can't get mad at that. So that's what I'm looking for on PayPal. I want to see buyers step in and send this thing back above at least the Hull and the mid-Bollinger Bands at the very least, with expanding green volume. I want to see that buyers are backing this and it's not a fake pump. That's PayPal. GERN, we were screaming to buy this thing at 104. I originally bought at 125 here. As it went down to 104, I averaged my position down. It was about 111. Now, we broke up above this wedge. I had promised 146, and we actually hit 148. So you should have taken profit here regardless. Now, some interesting things. While we were up here, we actually left a flash at 144. So I think that is pretty secure to have as a target to come back to. Now, the long-term target is 256. You know, it doesn't matter even if you buy right now. That's a 92% move with a gap fill as well. But 256 is really the big long-term goal on this thing. Now, there was a flash left at 114 as well. If this little micro movement, we see a lot of top wicks indicating that this might be seller absorption, right? Sellers absorbing all of the buyers as they're trying to push it up, and the sellers are saying, nope, nope, I'm going to take everything you got and I'm going to try and send you back down a little bit, right? On the 2-day here, we do have a nice bounce off the center line on the RSI thus far. MACD, looks like you're trending to curve back up. So in case this is a reaccumulation out of this range, you need to see it officially break kind of this this parallel channel top trend line. You want to see it open and close above it, back test it, and then you want to see that bigger move, right? This is your macro 236. That's huge. If you can get this back test, break above it, and then fully open and close above this 236, well, now all of a sudden you have an 80% chance of going here, right? 194, that's huge, okay? But wait, there's more. If we get above the 236, the mega macro 236, right? Open and close above this guy. We know our target is 256 ultimately. But if you open and close, you now technically have that same 80% chance of going to this 382 on the mega macro. And now all of a sudden, right, this trade becomes huge, 228%, right? And that's just from today's price. If it comes back down to 114, right, I'm going to buy the shit out of this thing. There's just no way. And the nicest thing about this whole thing is, too, is that you know exactly where to set your stop loss, right? Your low is 104. This is cake, dude. This is cake. Set it below. Who cares? Your risk to reward is insane on this thing. There's just, this is one of my favorite stocks right now. And so if this thing breaks down, I'm buying more as it goes down, right? I'm going to continue to buy more because I believe in this thing long term, right? Don't forget the weekly, right? The weekly, we had this failure swing, right? Confirmed. If the weekly can get above the 50 center line, this thing is cooking. I guarantee you, it's going to cook. But right now, you can see how many times it's tried and banged, and it hasn't done it yet. So that's kind of a little bit of confluence to me, thinking that maybe this is a micro distribution and we come back down maybe to the 114 area. And again, this isn't a thing to worry about because A, you should have already taken profit on this 30 to 40% move and made a fuck ton of money. But now, like, if it comes back down, I'm buying this again because I believe in this thing long term. I really do. That's what I got on GERN. I really like it still. Again, like the others, needs some time to cook, need to see some validation, needs to see buyers step in, break above this for that move. If not, we're coming back down to probably midpoint, you know, around that 114 area, and then we'll try again, right? PGY, I really like this thing. Can't remember his name. Shout out Discord guy. I think he was a gray name originally. Came up with this beautiful structure, right? This is macro. This is one giant ass accumulation. You broke above previous highs, and now it's back testing the previous highs. Now, typically when I try to do this, right? When I try to play an accumulation, you hit the SOS, right? On this diagram, you hit the SOS and you buy the backup, the BULPS, right? You want to buy the backup because this is breaking out of that range and back testing for buyer support. You want to buy that buyer support for the breakout. Now, been doing accumulations for a long time now, and not every accumulation is like this, right? Sometimes the SOS leads back into the midline of the accumulation, right? For buyer support. And that's where you can place your trade. I will place my trade here. I will scale in my position, and I will buy more at the midline. Now, if it breaks below that, that's confirmation that you're going to continue to go down to backtest the very bottom support. My stop loss is going to be just below the midline for the trending move expectation to go up. if that makes sense. Okay. Now, how do we translate to this chart? Well, here's your breakout. This is your SOS, right? And now you're in the BULPS phase, right? You can think of it as just a giant flag here. I have already bought my position, right? That's this blue line. My entry point's around 24 bucks, okay? Now, could this thing go down to the midline? Sure, right? This is roughly your midline. We technically got a flash there. It's 15 bucks. Okay. I do think long term this thing is going to rocket out. At a very minimum, you're looking at $42 for full profit target on this. So I'm going to continue to buy at key levels on the way down inside this structure. Okay. And average my price down with my stop loss just below. But I think it's a great price right now. I think $42 is absolutely achievable. I think the chart just looks great in general. We can dive in on the smaller time frames too, actually, just to take a peek here, because you'll notice that even in macro accumulations, you will notice other accumulations, right? And so originally, right, this is what I was seeing and why I made my trade. So on the smaller time frame, now we're looking at the 4 hours zoomed in. One could have imagined this was the accumulation, right? And so I saw the breakout occur here. It made with a bodied candle higher highs over this previous range. And then it back tested, right? That's where I placed my trade, the back test. Unfortunately, this thing continued to go down, right? Back to the bottom support, in which this technically would have been a failed trade, right? If you set your stop loss just below the midline, right? Now, the reason I didn't was because of everything we just talked about on the macro, okay? I'm going to continue to buy this thing as far down as it needs to go, unless it's past that midpoint on that macro accumulation, right? Now, maybe your account is small, right? Well, then just wait, right? If your stop loss was hit, then wait for a better entry, right? Maybe it goes for this little gap fill. Maybe that's your target at 18 bucks or 19 bucks, whatever. Maybe it's this 0.5 fib level. I don't know. I like this thing long term. It's putting in a bajillion touches of bullish divergence, right? You can kind of see this broadening wedge, kind of, right, throughout the whole structure. Yeah. I'm not making this shit up, dude. I'm just doing it on the fly, right? When I see this, I kind of like this. I don't like that the SMA is so far away yet, but I love the reaction so far, right? This seemed like a little fake out on the bottom side, bear trap potentially. I'm just spitting shit here. So, anyways, I like this stock. I think it's going to 42. Cake money. Will it take 6 months? It fucking could. Market looks sketchy, right? Spies has that flash going, right? Looking like a distribution on the top, waiting for the UTAD at all-time highs to hit before it pukes is my thesis, right? So with that in mind, I'm only aligning the trades that I think are safer, right? And I think at a very minimum, every single one of these that I'm talking about placing a long trade are going to be at least a B plus, right? And nothing lower than that, because I don't want to risk my money in a sketchy market right now. But I do like this, and I hope this and my thesis makes sense, okay? Because I realize that the way that I do things is not right for everybody else either, right? This is just the way that I think. You know, rules can be guidelines and therefore be broken once in a while. Every chart is different. This is one of those where I'm buying and I'm going to continue to buy on the way down because I really like the stock on the macro and I think it's got a lot to prove yet. I think it's fairly undervalued. And so that's, yeah, I don't mind seeing a little bit of red on this thing in my port. Disney. Disney, kind of the same thing, right? I bought in at about 114. Now, a couple things is that I was looking at this this Head and Shoulders here, right? Looks fantastic. You could even argue this is a scallop. Hit the 0.5, not quite 0.54. Doesn't have to be that. Pretty fucking close. Whatever. I like that. I like that it's working on a TD13, and in order for that to print, it has to get above. Let's take a peek here. Oh, jeez. Thanks. So it's got to get above 115.98, if you can read that. So that's kind of a neat little target for that. I think Disney also has a lot to prove. I love this. I love that we've had this channel and now the 4-hour just crossed the SMA and the center line. Now if we can get the breakout of structure towards the bull zone and even inside of it, this thing is going to rip. I like the MACD is curling and about to cross under center, very close to it. And then the targets for Disney, right? I think Disney's a great long-term hold as well. You can see got all these lines. I'm sorry, a lot of them are gap fills. But even at today's price, even the nearest gap fill is roughly that 116 area, right? And then flash targets, we got all the way up, and it still goes actually. So let me show you. Our highest flash target is actually at 178. That's a 59% return with a couple gap fills above that as well to fill. I love Disney long term. This just looks like it has been accumulating as well. So if we can break above, it's kind of the similar thing. Let me turn off some of these indicators so it doesn't look so shitty. So if we can break above, right? If we were to draw just like a shitty line or a box even, right? If we can break above that, probably run into this golden pocket as resistance. It'll back test somehow, some way. Maybe it comes back down to the top of the range. Maybe it comes back down to the midline. Totally possible. But then you're looking for the legitimate accumulation breakout towards that 178 target. This thing might take years, right? It might be 2030. I don't know. I don't care because this thing looks great. It's an easy to manage trade. You know, you best believe if we start getting up to that 133, 134 area where some flashes are below that golden pocket, I'm going to be taking profit, right? Because I want to buy back on the BULPS wherever that happens, that back test phase. Another thing to note, though, is that we do have a gap here as well, right? Back down to $93 roughly. So that is a potential as well. Let's look at this. Yeah, so hopefully this breaks out. If it doesn't, if it rejects here and sinks back down to the bottom of this wedge, you know, then we're probably looking at least 104 probably on the turn down, and maybe even farther if we start heading towards that gap fill. But I'm not too worried about that right now. Disney long term, I really like this thing as well. I think I think macro outlook, I think is pretty safe, especially in a sketchy market. there's a lot going for it as well. So Target, Target, I was really hoping it would hit my target at 113 last week. It did not. It had this rising wedge up into the daily bull zone, very dangerous, right? And so we saw a move breaking out, crossing the SMA, breaking the bull zone, coming down. Now, good thing, we have a golden cross, right? We also have some flash targets on the way down. And so I think that is super feasible. I think this would be a cake area to place a trade and set your stop loss right below it. Actually, I would target right here because that was the last point of supply. So I would set my stop loss right below that actually, because if it makes a new lower low, then you confirmed a downtrend, and now we're looking at like 85 and whatever, some other targets down below. But for right now, you have that golden cross, right? If this thing comes back down, I'm going to place my trade there, set my stop loss right below, maybe 93 bucks, and hopefully it turns and burns and continues up. I left a flash at 110 at the very least. You have the couple gaps to fill here up at 119, about 120. And then you actually have flash targets all the way back up to 158, it looks like. Yeah, so 158. Where price is at today, just to 158, you're looking at 49% move. Now, similar thing, right? This is the accumulation, right? You saw the break of previous highs, and I want to see it come back down, back test. Maybe this is that back test of the midline, right? Kind of makes sense. Maybe that's the 50 RSI as well. Maybe it's the bear zone. I don't know. But after that back test, I want to buy that back test, and I want to see that thing break for higher highs. Very simple. Very simple. There's some people talk about Mara. Now, Mara has, looks like it had a confirmed failure swing. Ran into the 50, starting to reject it. Now, I think this thing has, I think it does have room to go higher. But I don't think this is as solid as a setup yet. I think that yeah, I would rate this as maybe a C+. I'm not. Is it a potentially bad trade? No. I'm just not as confident in it. But what we would want to see is we want to see a break of the previous highs set right here. Okay, about 12.5 bucks. And then we would want to see a back test off of this structure. Okay. That means a couple different hurdles it needs to overtake. One is the 50, arguably one of the most important. 2, once you have that open and close above this 236, now you got your 80% chance going to this 382. And so that's where I was starting to make the thesis, right? From my original drawing I had here. Will it break above, reject that 382, maybe even make a higher high, come back down, find its base, and then that's where we would want to buy our back test, right? And then maybe go for that $15 area where we have some targets at. And actually we have targets all the way up to almost 22 bucks as well. So from today's price, you're looking at 107% increase. That's also the macro golden pocket. So you best believe that we've rejected off a few times, so we're likely going to do it again if we get up there. So, but this is what I'm looking at here first. That also means you need to confirm getting above the center line and head towards the bull zone as well. That's all I got to say on Mara right now. Just kind of a wait and see, right? Buy the back test. Wait for this thing to go and back test. Apple, I think Apple looks like shit. You have an impending death cross in the 4 hours. The daily look like. Let's just take a peek once it loads here. I mean, first of all, this head and shoulders / distribution. You even had your top wick for last, your LPSY, your last point, right, of support here that rejected, and now you are back testing this. And so you lost the 50 here. Now you're gunning for probably that 200 there. You have a gap fill there. That's the 382, which you have now opened and closed under the 236. So now backwards psychology, backwards math, 80% chance to get here, 235. It's probably going to happen. Is it going to happen tomorrow? Probably no, because you're already hitting oversold territory. You have this channel going. So I would at least expect on a minimum maybe a relief bounce, right? Back test the bottom area of what once was support, now resistance, and if it fails, right, backwards psychology, buy the back test for a short position here and aim for that 382. Which is also your 200, right? Just what we said. Lots of confluence here. And maybe on the R side, I'll do something like this, and then maybe get your breakout. I don't know. I'm just drawing here, just drawing lines and shit. 4 hour. 4 hour. You did have a TD9 here. Confirm. You also had a decent terminal candle in the 812 here, with some heavy support or with heavy sell volume here, which is decent, right? But the crappy thing is that the buyer volume that came in left a huge top wick, indicating that sellers are probably absorbing any buyers that are at this area, which means you might have a slow walk up. It might just turn down and burn here, right? With how oversold this thing is, I don't think so. I don't think it'll just dump. I think that you'll get something, some sort of reaction, but I do think at least you're gonna go for 235. I think it's a really cake put trade. I really do. But I want to wait until we get maybe a back test if that happens. And if it doesn't, oh no, oh well, you missed a short position. Is that 382 a decent place to go long? Yeah. Is the trade going to be super easy to manage? Yeah. So what's the fucking problem here, right? If it breaks through, it's going to 228. It's going to go there. If it breaks 382, it's going to 228. Play that one then. But anyways, I do like this 4-hour RSI wedge, or channel, whatever you want to call it. I think there's a good chance in a relief bounce here, but I do think long term it's going to end up filling this gap and go for this 382 where we have a flash, and that's where the daily 200 is as well. I think that's pretty much written in the books. You can expect that. So DJT had this micro accumulation, and you had the Bitcoin news. Now we're kind of doing this shitty ass flag. You have the Bollinger Bands now compressing. Now look at this. I like this part. See how the 50 MA has crossed through the bottom part of the Bollinger Bands, and now it's starting to curve up. That's typically a good sign. Typically, that means the trending range is bullish. You're above it. Now, we're looking for that MACD cross, right? We want to see the RSI head towards the bull zone and get in it. I have my stop loss set right below this most recent form of support, right? My position is 1048. I've moved my stops up to this last form of support, right? Because if it breaks this structure right here, it's probably going to fill this gap fill and go down. And now we're back to square one, and I didn't make any money, right? I don't want that. I've already taken profit here when we ran into the macro 236, as one should. And now we're just kind of dicking around, right? We got this long-term trend channel that it just keeps, fighting. But if we can get above it, and ideally, if we can get above that 236, then we're going to look for that 80% chance of going here, right, at the 382, where we have flashes at 2169, 2243. And so from today's price, you're looking at 53% and 58% move just from today's price. Is this thing going to take a year? It might. But I like the setup. The trade is super easy to manage. Even if you buy today, here, set your stop loss right below. What do we got there? Oops. Let's just see. So you're looking at 12%, right? To me, that's fine. I don't like to do 10% because 10% is a psychological number that most traders will do, and I believe market makers will wick into a 10% stop loss to fuck over everybody. And so I will typically do anywhere from 2 to 4% below that. That's just my risk tolerance. But that's what I would do. So that would be perfectly fine, right? If you want to zoom in and try and get a better, entry point and decrease this a couple percent, sure, by all means, you do you, boo. But for now, this is what I'm looking at. I like the chart yet. I think it looks great. So, and 22 is not the full profit target that I have on this thing. I got full profit target at 95 bucks actually. So, even to the golden pocket where that gap fill is, 171%. The 886 roughly 320%, and then yeah, your 95 is 568%, and I do think it's totally doable. So we're just kind of hanging out on this one, but I like it. Looks good. Just waiting for that break. Nike, I do really like. I almost am hoping that it will come back down to 57 bucks so I can buy, just continue to accumulate, right? I think literally anywhere in this orange box is good value. And I'm buying everything in here because I believe in this thing long term. I think the tariffs eventually are going to be lifted. And this thing has crazy profit targets as well, right? I guess my highest one is 103. Yeah, I guess it's 103. I still think that's crazy. I like that. I like that a lot. Let's just do a fib actually. Un momento. So from here to lows. Okay, so you're looking at the 236 at about 70 bucks. So if you can get above that open and close, hit those flashes, then you have an 80% chance to go to the 382, and all of a sudden today's prices to the 382 is a 30% move. That's pretty damn good, right? Next flash you got at that 103 area, that's 60% move. And maybe it just continues, right? Maybe it goes for all-time highs. I don't know. But I like this as well for a long-term port stock. Any time it's dipping below here, I'm gonna be buying this because I really like this setup. Last one. Saw a lot of people are talking about Netflix. Especially with their news cash offer for Warner Brothers, yada yada yada, full cash. That's cool. Whatever. The stock tanked today and tried to recover. Still left the gap, right? You're in this RSI wedge as well, nearing oversold territory. I think it's pretty similar to Apple. I think that because you're down here, I think you're gonna get some sort of reaction move out. Maybe it only hits the top of the bear zone. Maybe it hits the 50. Maybe it does go all the way up and it just rips, all the way up to our target at 124, which is currently a 46% move. Hit those gap fills as well. That totally could be a thing, but I'm not super believing in it. Maybe we only come up to 95 bucks and it finds resistance and then it rejects further down and maybe it goes for this gap fill or this shitty ass alt bat harmonic that I got drawn there. You do have a daily death cross, and it exited the top Bollinger Band facing down, assuming that the trending move is going to continue down, right? In which it has. So that's kind of my thoughts. Like I said, it could be very similar to Apple. Maybe you got a little relief bounce, but I mean, I think at a very minimum, it's going to hit 80, 80, 89. At a very minimum. We'll see. We'll see. I like this thing for long term. But I'm going to sit patient on this one. What's the weekly look like on this guy? Just out of curiosity. Holy shit, look at this. That's pretty coiled up. ADX DMI negative, screaming hot coffee here, indicating that the strength in the move coming down is strong. Notice the volume picking up here. You got some pretty decent sized weekly volume candles. This move down, the sellers are definitely in control. And so I would keep that in mind and also look in here now at the macro. If you hit that flash, right below the 236, if this opens and closes a weekly candle is what I'm going to be looking for under the 236. Now you have your 80% chance of going to the 382 down at 60 bucks, which we have a flash at 64.85 as well as your weekly 200. Seems like a decent spot to go long. The SMA could be a little bit closer to the RSI line before a full breakout. So yeah, I'm just being patient with this thing. I would honestly just flip back and forth between, let's look here. Out of curiosity, is that legit? Sure. Honestly, just flip back and forth between the 2-day and the weekly. That's what I would do. That's what I would do. I'm not really interested in anything lower. That's all I got. So thanks for listening to me ramble about these stocks that maybe none of them hit, but we'll see. All right.